Hi everybody, this is Cynthia Walker back here to bring a little preview of our victory gardens this year. So as you heard me talk about a long while ago when we were preparing these beds, the museum is lucky enough this year that we secured funding both from generous donors as well as a grant called Seed Money to expand the garden all the way over to that area of our campus, which doubles our space and doubles our growing power. So what we've done this year is not only we're not only going to be talking about victory gardens and the 1940s and what that did for food conservation, but we're also going to be curating it a bit more to talk about native plants versus non-native plants. So as you can see here, all the beds are planted, or most of them are, either with seedlings that very kind donors and supporters and members started for us and donated, which is wonderful, or the empty areas have seeds in them that are growing up through the soil. And you'll also notice as we walk through today that this the beds certainly have some weeds going on, which we will be taking care of, but that leads me to speak just a bit about volunteerism. So if you are interested this summer in helping us take care of the gardens, we certainly need the help. There's harvesting that needs to go on by the end of the summer. There's certainly weeding and just kind of tending to them to making sure that they're doing okay. And honestly, watering. It takes me about an hour to an hour and a half every day to water these beds to make sure that they're getting the nutrients that they need. But back to kind of our curated view of plants that are growing here at the museum. So this entire block square and the boxes that are contained in it are showing basically what we are calling immigrant plants. So plants that we are all familiar with and consider part of the American diet, but they are not native to Maine, and they are not native to North America. So in this bed we have cucumbers. You can see we have one here, one there. We had a whole row, and unfortunately the rest of them died off. So actually another call out, if anybody has extra cucumber seedlings, we would be indebted to you if you would help us refill our cucumber growth here. Next is romaine lettuce. There's another row of romaine lettuce that's going to be growing from seed to make sure that we have double the bounty. And then this last area here is going to be rainbow Swiss chard, if I could say that correctly. So that is the ones in this box. Generally their history is originating from the Mediterranean area in Greece. This next box, we have some kale growing along here. We have some Brussels sprouts, red cabbage, and then broccoli growing as well, again with the weeds, which we will clear out. But those were all from the Middle Eastern region, if I'm not mistaken. Again, we'll have signage and interpretive panels put up, so when you come to visit the museum, you can learn all about why we place the plants as we have. This box has multiple rows of carrots that need to be thinned out in order to grow a little bit better. We have some radishes coming up, and we have the back area has some snap peas coming up. Again, those are all items that we're really familiar with in the American diet, but actually came from more faraway places like Asia. This bed, we have two items growing. So we have lupins, which are we all love here in the state of Maine. Those really beautiful purple or pink flowers sometimes that bloom in the early spring. And though Maine is well known for lupins, most lupins that we see today are actually transplants. The ones that are native to Maine have not been seen in this state, or at least in southern Maine, for quite a while. So these are transplants. And then we have Oops, I just noticed that this guy's leaning down. Guess he wants to stay there. These are seedlings of raspberries. So we've actually successfully rooted some raspberry plants over the winter, and those are going to be growing up and probably be a permanent fixture there in that bed. This bed has various different tomatoes growing, as well as peppers growing on the other side, because both of these items, or foods I should say, are native to the Americas, but they originated most likely in South America and were brought up by explorers during the time of Columbus and after that. This last bed here in the immigrant section is, we have beets on this side, we have garlic right in the middle, and then spinach on the other side. And that's because all three of those things came from, originated actually in Asia. And let's take a walk real quickly over to this side. So one thing I'll note is if you visited the museum before, you're familiar with the sights and sounds of downtown Kennebunk, so please excuse all the car honking and the motorcycles and everything else in between. So in these two little beds here with our metal holders, you can see these ones are suffering, and this is, I'll be honest, my third try with these beans. So these are beans, they're a special kind of bean called shell bean. We've just tried planting them this year. I got them from a seller in Vermont who cultivates shell beans. And if anybody has eaten the recipe called succotash, it's a popular old New England recipe, and it dates back to indigenous times before settlers came here. So we're trying to grow those, but they're just not doing very well. So this is our third batch of seedlings coming up. So we're going to hope for a better try with them. Again, so I didn't mention this, but we're in the indigenous plant section of our garden beds. So these three growing up are pumpkins. There's another Connecticut field pumpkin planted in this bare spot right here. And if anybody knows this, Connecticut field pumpkins are one of the kind of original pumpkins that grew in obviously Connecticut and are well known for being jack-o'-lantern pumpkins. And then these two beds side by side are growing the Three Sisters, which is corn in the center, squash around the outside, and then I'm not gonna be hard pressed to find a bean growing up, but there's beans growing up that will eventually wrap around the corn once it's tall enough. The last little piece that we have here, we're redoing this area. So if anyone's driven by the museum in the early spring, you might remember that we have tulips that grow right in this area. So we blocked it off with some brick. The tulips were planted as part of as a member drive several years ago, and they still grow here, and it's just a very nice ode and thank you to all of the members that support the museum year-round. So we're going to keep that here, even though tulips are not native to this area, obviously. So anyway, that is a little sneak peek at what you'll see when you come to the museum. Excuse me, hopefully, I'll show you this little sign that we've put up, but hopefully once you get here, everything will be a little bit more grown. And I'll just remind everybody that everything grown here at the museum's gardens goes to our local food pantries. So thanks for listening in, and we'll see you tomorrow.